Okay, so we are back on Startup Fair stage, and I would like to introduce our next guest. So our next guest is Klaus Konrad. He's an investment director at Intel Capital, and Intel Capital is the corporate venture arm of the entire Intel Corporation. They have more than 400 companies in their portfolio, 400 startups. And I'm very happy to say that one of them is a Lithuanian company, CG Trader, which is a 3D model marketplace. So I'd like to introduce you Klaus Konrad, who's going to be talking about what do successful leaders do to grow their young companies. So please give a round of applause to Klaus Konrad.
Thank you very much for the nice intro. Appreciate it. Good to be here. Any of you up for Champions League soccer? Anybody watches soccer? Very few. So yeah, it's a basketball nation. I know that. For those of you who follow Champions League, FC, the Bayern Munich is my team. I come from Munich. And they had a recent problem, which was the lead player of the team, Bastian Schweinsteiger. He was not allowed to play in the last game because he had behaved badly in the game before. And he got a red card and was not allowed to play. Problem number one. But on top of that, the managing director of the club is just supposed to go to prison now. So that's the kind of club I like, and despite the fact that two of the key leaders were missing, the team behaved and they were able to win against Manchester last Wednesday. In Germany we say the culture of an enterprise you can tell from how the kids behave once the parents are outside. So the soccer players in FC Munich, they behaved. Let's start with this question. What is a leader? What is a leader? Any idea? Actually, the answer is very simple. A leader is somebody whom other people follow. A leader is somebody whom other people follow. Let's look at this, the nightclub principle. You see a nightclub. Usually there's one door. You have two fat guys standing in front of the club. And you have a long queue, especially if it's popular. Now, some of us could say, oh, yeah, come on, I don't want to go to these places. This is embarrassing. But to be honest, on the other side, you might say, oh, it's quite tempting if I have a chance to pass the queue, get to the door, and say hi to the doorman and just go in, right? It feels pretty cool. And this is a privilege. And if you have a chance to have this privilege, it feels pretty cool. So a good leader has a team where the employees feel that it's a privilege to be part of that team. How can you do that? A classical way to do it, I mean, you offer a nice salary, you might offer a cool car, first-class tickets on the airplane. Many enterprises do it like that, right? Can a young company, a startup, do it that way? Probably not. I mean, maybe you're lucky you got a $20 million round, then you can do it, but usually this is not the case. One trick works pretty well, that is shares in the form of stock options on the top middle. Another trick is titles. The cheapest way a leader can win sometimes employees is give them a VP, right? That's really cheap, it works. By the way, this title was generated by a site on the internet called Bullshit Job. So if you ever are looking for a cool title and can't imagine one, there's a machine that produces titles for you. So how does a leader start? The German writer Johann Wolfgang from Goethe, you might know him, he once said, if you get the first button wrong, you probably have a very hard time in fasten up your jacket, right? So what's the first step of a leader? And I think, and this is what I've seen with those successful leaders in our portfolio, they start with a great story. And I think a great story is not just a story, it's much more. So it has to do with inspiration, it has to do with a vision, it has to do with a purpose and a mission. And without getting into detail what all the difference between these words is, you want to have a great story. And let me give you an example from one of the companies I invested in. The company is called BrainLab. And the founder of this company is called Stefan Filzmeier. He's in Munich, where I am. He has built a company in medtech, medical devices for hospitals, and they treat cancer. He literally started the company in a garage. There were 2 guys, and then he realized he had no chance to sell his devices to hospitals. Because, you know, a hospital has all this administration and serious people, and they were nerds. The team was nerds. So he said, look, I need to win a very serious sales manager for my team. And he was successful. He got a global VP sales, global VP sales from an IT OEM. Why did the sales manager join this weird team, and why did the sales manager accept the salary that was just a fraction of what he originally earned? So 2 years ago, I had a dinner with that sales manager and I asked him that question, and he said, to be honest, the founder had figured out that my mother died on cancer. And he told me, this company is working on a product that helps save lives as your mother's. And that convinced him to join the company. I'm serious. So let's look at some other stories here. What's the story of the Chanel costume? You could say, well, it allows women to, you know, wear something else than a dress. Is it a powerful story? Not really. But if you say the Chanel costume opened a whole new world for women in terms of the role they could play in society, I think that's a pretty powerful story. And Chanel actually became a symbol of that new role of women in society. Let's look at graphical user interfaces. That's in the middle of the page. A lot of you might say, what's a graphical user interface? Because anything is a graphical user interface right now. But when I learned to work with computers, everything was based on text and computer language, right? So somebody could say, well, a graphical user interface helps you to be more effective in your work with the computer. It saves some time. Specifically, it saves time when you learn how to use the computer. Is that a powerful story? Not so much. But if you say, before that thing, you had to learn the story of computer, and now the computer speaks your language, that sounds much more interesting, right? Minecraft, what's the story here? The story is build your own world. And we know how much kids are into this. My own kids are very much into this, and it works. How do leaders communicate with customers? You all know this. Buy one, get one free, free toy inside, buy one, get one free, or this, drink this and you will lose 1 pound every week, right? It has worked for me, but usually it doesn't. So I call this manipulation. And what I mean with manipulation is, these kind of messages get your customer to make one transaction. Right? He buys once your product, but then you have to win him again. You don't get a loyal customer, but a leader, again, a leader is somebody whom people follow. So if you want customers you to follow, you need loyal customers, not just transactions. The messages here at the bottom is what I call very much value proposition focused. It's about explaining the properties of your product. Is that the way Apple communicates to its customers? Does Apple say, once you buy this MacBook, you get X inch of screen, you get X gigabyte of storage? Do the German car companies sell their cars based on what's the trunk size in liters? Not really. So I would recommend, in terms of value proposition, to be very careful. And let me get to the next one. It relates to what I think a pretty strategic impact of communications. Let's take the example of a railway station. So assume you were the owner of a railway company 100 years ago. What could have been your mission? I mean, you could have said, I want to have the most successful railway company in the world, the most convenient, the cheapest, the most successful, whatever. That could have been a mission. If the plane comes up as a new means of transportation, suddenly it is cannibalizing your business, right? What has Amazon done on this? Amazon could have said, our mission is to be the most successful bookseller in the world. But then they came up with the Kindle. This is not a book. So their mission statement, if I cut it in short, very much reads like, we are the best in selling stuff online, stuff, much more general. And if the owner of the railway business would have said, we want to bring people from A to B and do that best, the plane would actually have been an opportunity for them to expand their business, right? Has anybody done that? To my knowledge, I don't know a railway company that has done that. Why not? Now, the second part of what I wouldn't talk about is about can you plan success? And I think no. Just a couple of examples. Anybody knows what this device on the top is? Sorry? It's an Apple device. It's Apple Newton. They invested a couple of $100 million into this device, mid-90s. Lots of people, hundreds of developers, lots of marketing, lots of intelligent people. It was a complete failure. They planned this success to the detail. It failed. By the way, Apple had another of this blockbuster that failed. At the bottom of the other side, on the other hand, you have products that are successes out of the blue. Nobody would have expected them to be successful. Twilight, right? When the author sent the script of Twilight to publishers, publishers went back and said, you have no clue about vampires. You break all the rules. Go back and make your homework on vampires, because vampires cannot survive in daylight, right? And she broke all the rules. She had no clue, the author. And what happened? I think we all know it was one of the blockbuster successes in literature and movie industry. Local example, Getjar. I think a lot of you know Ilya from here. Ilya wanted to develop a test platform for software. What did those stupid software developers do with this platform? They used it as a sharing of files. That was not the intention. And it was a tremendous success. I mean, Ilya bought one of the biggest independent app stores in the world, right? Then, right-hand side, Intel microprocessor. Now, you might want to say, come on, don't tell us that the microprocessor happened by accident. Come on, this needs so much development. But I'm telling you, it came out of complete blue. It was simply by accident. Intel originally had storage devices. And one day this customer comes and says, please build a calculation device for me. And the Intel salespeople say, no, I'm sorry, this is not our business. We need to focus. Customer goes home, comes back a couple of weeks later and says, please, I pay you even more money, build this calculation engine for me. And they say, no, our shareholders say, focus, this is not our business. He comes back a third time. And Intel finally builds 16 of these microprocessors for him, 16. The customer is happy, takes the microprocessors, and then the Intel people start to think, wait a minute, maybe there's something in it, and they realize they have given all the IP to this customer because it was a customer-based project. And they buy back the IP from the first customer, and they have to pay $60,000 for it. And that's the basis of the success of Intel, right? Completely out of the blue. So what can you do? Another example. This is my favorite example of you cannot plan success. I think we all are clear that Apple iPhone is one of the most successful products over the last years. So read this. This is an article that appeared just before the Apple iPhone was launched. And even more surprising, I have a collection in my office with 30 research reports about the Apple iPhone before it was launched. All the big names, analysts, research companies, 50 pages of report. And they do the full-blown analysis of this iPhone. Competitive analysis, supply chain analysis, Boston Consulting metrics, so all what you learn in business school. And they have 30 arguments to say it must fail. Apple has no chance with the iPhone. And look at the last points here. I like them specifically. It's not business. It's business, not pleasure. Stop dreaming. And if the iPhone fails, it's just a question if Apple will go down the drain with it. We all know what happened. So what I'm saying is it's very hard to analyze success with classical measures, specifically if the success is a groundbreaking, new industry-shaping thing. And by the way, the same thing happened with TV, the same thing happened with telephone, the same thing happened with car. A lot of experts just predict it will be a complete failure. So now it's the key question, what can a leader do if success cannot seriously be planned? And what do you think, if it's a matter of stochastics, and there might be some mathematical guys in here, if it's a stochastics question, what can you do? Any ideas? Any poker players in here? What do you do in poker playing? Place the odds. Do many bets, right? Do many bets, place many bets. Because if you place many bets and each bet has a low chance to win, then one of them might win. And Rovio, you know that company, had developed one game and it failed. It developed another game, it failed. It developed another game, it failed, blah, 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 blah. Game number 52 was Angry Birds. Amazing, isn't it? They kept trying. They were not able to plan success. Now, some of you might tell me, Klaus, come on. If I'm working for a small company, everybody tells me focus. You cannot do anything all at the same time. Focus. So how can I place many bets? And the answer is very simple. Again, it's stochastics. Play small bets, right? If you play small bets, you can place many bets. To my knowledge, the Angry Birds game cost around $40,000 before it got traction. Just multiply $40,000 times 50 games, $2 million investment. Well, that can be done in a games company. By the way, I get many business plans of games companies with a 10 million funding for one game. Maybe better to invest in a company that can do 50 trials at the same amount of money, right? And nature does exactly that. Look at the seeds of plants. A plant does not try to forecast where a plant might grow, which is the fertile ground. It just sends out many seeds. And the investment in each seed is very small, right? Learn from nature. Who of you is aware of the waterfall model in developing products or developing software? Some hands, I see a couple of hands. I'm still surprised, I see many companies a year, how many young companies, startups still work on a waterfall model with their software. What is a waterfall model? It is, you analyze the customer need in a big document. Then you analyze how can you meet the customer demand to build that product. Then you develop. And then you test. And hopefully it works in the end. What is the problem with the waterfall model? It's three. You see them highlighted red here. Problem number one is the arrow at the bottom. It takes a long time to build a whole software in one piece. It might take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, right? What's the second problem with that waterfall model? What is that symbol? Anybody has an idea what that symbol with the plane means? It symbolizes the Berlin airport. I call that the Berlin airport syndrome. You might have read that in the press. It's a complete disaster. Berlin is trying to build an airport. It's still not done. I had bought a ticket for the Berlin airport, showing on my ticket in January 2012. That's more than 2 years ago. I had a ticket to fly through Berlin. And you know what? The planners of this airport still don't know when it could be finished. It's not that they say it's delayed. They don't even know when it could be finished. And you know, I'm a German guy, so I can talk about it. I'm not from Berlin, I'm from Bavaria. And there's a big difference. Bavaria and Berlin actually goes to a point that the Bavarians are so proud. It's a bit similar to Texas, right? The Bavarians are so proud that they say, we want to be independent from Germany. What? No, I mean, you can have the assumption they will not go to Russia, and the same for Texas. But the Berlin syndrome, for me, symbolizes that if you run big projects, you really run the risk that in the end it might not work entirely. What's the third problem? What is the red circle highlighting here? Any idea? It highlights, yes? Sorry?
Customer is not involved in the process, right?
There's no customer. It's the no customer that is highlighted here. You have prepared a nice buffet, but nobody wants to eat that stuff. And if you build a huge project, that's a Newton way, right? I talked about before about Newton from Apple. They built a huge project, nobody wanted to buy it. So how can you address these problems? So let's start with the one on the very right. How can you address that nobody buys your product? You could say, oh, buy a product that customers love. Well, that's easy said if you can plan it. My answer to that is start with selling. Don't waste your time with developing the product, start with selling. How can you address the problem that the process of development is so long? Put it in very short chunks of development, right? And that's shown here. You all know the agile approach, lean approach. I'm a big fan of it, and I continuously see the companies I look at or that I manage to be so much more successful in that process. So you start selling, you throw it to your customers, and then you see what happens. And don't just look if the customer buys it or not. Look, what does the customer do with this? Observe very carefully. And then you might have an idea, you build something else, right? And this is a circle, and you keep that circle running very fast. Maybe on a weekly basis, maybe on a daily basis. This is up to your process. And by the way, this is exactly what nature does with this. The development of human being was not in one step. It really was a continuous development called evolution. I recommend companies develop your products in an evolution base. You could call it fast prototyping, you could call it agile, whatever you call it, go fast circles. It really works. And there's one important aspect to that fast development, which is unintended consequences. By the way, when I looked at this slide, I realized that you might have a different imagination on what I want to talk about than I really want to talk about. Maybe you just think, well, we know rabbits grow fast in their population, so it's about fast growth of companies. And yes, that's right, but that's not what I had in mind when I created this slide, so it is an unintended consequence. And by the way, this happened to my family. So we bought 3 rabbits last year, pretty much a year ago. Guess how many we have now? We have 15. And the reason is we were not fast enough in managing the males to control the unintended consequences, right? Now, the story that I really wanted to tell about this was that, imagine, our rabbits are out in the garden during the day, and in the evening they're supposed to go to the stable. So my family chases them in the evening. Imagine a couple of people chasing rabbits in the garden that run at the speed of light. It's a pretty big spectacle, and it takes a long time. You don't believe how fast these guys are. So it's frustrating. And then my son said, look, I need to be innovative here. No, actually he didn't say that. He said, I want to find a solution. So he takes a stick And he has seen that from the farmers where we live, because we live again, in Bavaria, there are lots of cows, right? So the farmers in Bavaria have a stick and then they herd and drive the cows to the stable. So he takes a stick, pushes it on the ground. What happens? The rabbits don't run away, they come to the stick because they're curious animals. So at first he's very frustrated because it doesn't work, right? And then he realizes, wow, there's an opportunity, because if I go with the stick to the stable, the rabbits follow, they're curious. So with the stick he guides them to the stable, and it's kind of an innovation, right? It's an unintended consequence, and I really encourage companies, when you develop a product and sell it to your customers, and the customer does something else with it, take advantage of it. Think of Ilya Laurs with GetJar, right? He wanted to have a test platform for software. His engineers used it as just sharing software with an app store. And by the way, at first he was frustrated because he had to pay a lot of money to buy more and more servers, because so many engineers put all their software on this platform. But then he realized there's an opportunity. Please be very careful in managing and observing unintended consequences. One hint to leaders that I observed works very well is rhythm. Remember, keep that fast innovation cycle flowing quickly. If you are able to implement a rhythm into your company that helps to keep that going fast, it creates speed. So maybe you have a weekly, maybe you have a bi-daily development process. And not only it helps you to be fast, it also gives comfort to the team, which is very important. Everybody knows what the rhythm is. And add a yearly rhythm, add a monthly rhythm, right, to the company. Everybody is comfortable about that. It works very well. Yeah, I will not talk a lot about this slide. The whole concept of giving a company a culture is sometimes underestimated. Remember, a leader is a person that people follow. You can only have people follow you if they feel loyalty with you, if they feel identification. Give them a chance to develop a culture. You don't have to develop the culture as a leader. Just give the employees a chance to develop that. Whatever comes up, that might be some crazy stuff. Some of you might have read the book of Tony Hsiu. For me, his culture was simply party, right? It has worked. It's a party culture. I remember that once I met this company at their place, I couldn't believe what happened. The whole party started at the parking lot when I was at this company, because some gorillas came out of the building. They had their jungle day, so I'm not kidding. Inspiration. What does the leader start with? First step is a strong story. In order to be able to create a strong story, you need to be inspired. I mean, there's no way around this. You cannot just grab a story out of air. Be inspired. Make sure you have sources to be inspired. So expose yourself to unusual people. Expose yourself to unusual situations. If you're a software company, don't just go to software conferences. Go to arts conferences. Why not go to a design architect conference? Why not go to a music whatever event? Meet people from completely different disciplines. Why not biology, right? And the same for your employees. Give your employees the time and opportunity to be inspired. Again, it's this fast circle. And in the fast circle, all the times you need to introduce some ideas. You can only do this if there's a source of inspiration, right? And I think that's quite important. Part of the culture. So with that, I move to the last slide, which is about Intel Capital. For those of you who have not come across Intel Capital is a quite sizable investment business for Intel, the chip manufacturer. We do this since about 20 years. We have a large portfolio. We are very active out there. We are proud that we were chosen as the most successful venture capital investor in 2012. We are very proud to be chosen as the most successful corporate venture investor 2013. And I think a lot of these awards are based on our exits. That's where the investor creates value, right? We had 33 of them last year, 6 IPOs. We are proud of this. We are proud of our investment, CG Trader locally. I see Dalia and Marius. Give them an applause. Our investment in Lithuania. If you have any interest or any business or any ideas related to 3D printing, I think it's a must to talk to these guys. There's plenty of ideas and inspiration going around this platform. It's a platform business. Please talk to them, exchange ideas. I think there's a great opportunity here. If you have other business, startup ideas, whatever you want to tell us, show us companies, send us an email on this webpage. And with that, I have 22 seconds left, and I say thank you for your attention. It was a pleasure to talk to you.